Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Yorlene Cruz. I'm from Costa Rica. Since 2010, I've been the Vetiver Network International Coordinator for Costa Rica. And in December 2016, I was appointed Director of this international organization, the Vetiver Network International. Um, It's a great honor for me to have received the invitation to participate in this important event as a speaker about the history of the Vetiver Plan and our journey to today with its dissemination and project execution in Costa Rica. So, without further preamble, here we go. Okay, about the vetiver itself, although we have records of local native vetiver plants dating back more than 50 years in Costa Rica, the official reports of the Chrysophogon cisanioides variety originating from southern India and that was introduced in Costa Rica and in the region by the Vetiver Network International, it has to be said that the Latin American Vetiver Network was officially installed in Costa Rica in mid-90s, approx at the beginning of 1996. Its main objective was to take advantage of the climatic, geographical conditions, and environmental awareness of our country to establish a base operating center in order to achieve the dissemination to the other countries of the region. All the information about this wonderful plant and the different applications of vetiver technology for soil and water conservation, for bioengineering and bioremediation. The pioneers of the dissemination of the vetiver and its technical applications in our country from 1996 were Joan Miller and Jim Smile, Jim was previously the coordinator of the Global Vetiver Network at the World Bank, and today he's part of the board of directors of the Vetiver Network International. People always ask me when I met the vetiver, when Yorlene Cruz met the vetiver. Well, it was because of my father. He's my father. His name is Francisco Cruz. It turns out that in 1996, he was carrying out some soil movement and the corresponding slopes were going to need stabilization. At that time, I was importing gabions. For those of you who are not familiar with the word gabions, they are metal mesh cages that are filled with stones to build retaining walls. So obviously, I suggested to my father that he should use gabions to solve the issues. I remember that he replied, no thanks, that he said that he had recently participated in a workshop on soil and water conservation where he had been introduced with a grass native to India that was not invasive, nor did it compete with native species, and that it was great for erosion control and stabilization. Today, I'm sure that this workshop was part of the introduction strategy that Joan Miller and Jim Smile carried out just after that year, 1996. Um, I believe at that time that my father was planting or mistakenly planting the carpet type grass used in landscaping, just in landscaping. And I was very worried because I was thinking that my dad was going to implement just a landscaping project and not the efficient traditional heavy engineering solution that I was proposing him. Well, just 2 years later, in 1998, which coincidentally is when the root system of Vetiver reaches its maximum depth, um, the deadly Hurricane Mitch hit the region, leaving more than 11,000 people missing, and entire towns buried, mainly in Honduras and Nicaragua. Our country also suffered devastating floods, a huge landslide, large losses in infrastructure, roads, bridges, dams, dikes, and more. The impact was enormous. The Gavion Company immediately sent me to the Honduran office to help with the reconstruction. When I returned to Costa Rica, I was very worried about my father's slopes. I imagined them collapse to the ground on the ground. Um, However, they were, for my surprise, they were intact, and the slopes and infrastructure of his friends, my father's friends, who had taken his advice um, and agreed to protect with Vetiver, were also very happy with their intact infrastructure. So I had to recognize that my father was that my father obviously had valuable information that I need to know because uh, I was missing something, a great piece of information. That's why I started looking for additional information to finally contact the Vetiver Network International. The first one in the Vetiver Network International I talked to was Mr. Dick Grisham, who is my mentor, in order to, okay, what happened the following years? In order to introduce the Vetiver, we implemented 7 strategies. Okay, I will try to summarize them. Strategy number 1 is what happened with the Gavion Company. Always people ask me that. What happened with the Gavion Company? Well, we started using the Vetiver as a strategy to avoid losing contracts, to avoid losing clients that didn't have enough money, by reducing the cost of projects for private clients with limited budgets. Remember that limited budgets are the rule in our Latin American countries. So we start convincing, we convinced geotechnical consultants, so they began to design more and more lower gabion walls, and we complete or finish the crowns installing vetiver hedgerows. And so each time we're designing more and more designing solutions with a smaller base of gabions, less cubic meters of mesh and stone, and a greater number of vetiver hedgerows. Okay, the strategy number 2 was to reach out for small farmers, and as a strategy to project ourselves, to project our company to the community, as social action, we help them, the small farmers, to organize themselves into associations. The last one is called AFACAPA. We offered them free workshops, to donate them vetiver plants, explain the benefits of the agriculture improvement and infrastructure protection. In addition, they could market or sell their hedgerows and replant them to obtain additional income every rainy season. In fact, as an internal policy of each purchase order we receive or is received by Sistema Vetiver Costa Rica, an important percentage is supplied by this small farmer, who also have, again, complete freedom to market their vetiver by themselves. Strategy number 3 is to participate at technical talks at professional conferences like this one. We began to participate more and more as speakers in professional conference on geotechnics, road funds, civil engineering, IECI, IECA, which means International Erosion Control Association, water resources and environmental sanitation, and of course, institutions and universities, where professional consultants began to become familiar with the vetiver technology. Strategy number 4 is that we began to operate like pharmaceutical companies when they send their medical representatives to introduce their new medications to specialist doctors. Well, we did exactly the same. We also went with the civil geotechnical consulting engineers to give them private talk, technical talk, and advise them so that they would assume the responsibility of recommending vetiver technology instead of the already well-known and proven traditional gray engineering solutions. Exactly the same as when a specialist doctor assumes the responsibility of prescribing a new medicine. Well, strategy number 5 is another strategy that worked perfectly, was opening our farms to the academy. We achieved that the UCR, UCR, the School of Civil Engineering of the Universidad de Costa Rica, University of Costa Rica, which is the best university not only in the country but in the region, and which has the most prestigious materials laboratory. The laboratory name is LANAME, which means National Laboratory of Materials and Structural Models. Well, they conduct scientific and academic research on our vetiver. I remember that, again, members of the Vetiver Network International in Australia and Vietnam, such as Paul Tron and Tran Tam Van, who have led the global research on vetiver, were involved in accompanying the methodological design for the test. What kind of tests were carried out? Well, tensile strength, shear strength, among others. The research results were fantastic, and to this day, they work as an excellent letter of recommendation for the vetiver system every time we meet a skeptic. Okay, the strategy number 6 is that at first achieving projects with state institutions is quite complicated, because if vetiver is not included in the technical specifications from the initial bid, once the project is awarded, they can only implement solutions agreed upon in the tender of subsequent contract. If not, the item is not in the contract, the item cannot be installed. In addition, for budgetary reasons and lack of culture in negotiation control, highway projects mainly leave their slopes unprotected. That's a reality. There also have been corruption scandals suggesting that some big construction companies make millions of dollars mitigating disasters every rainy season. So not to protect is a big business for some people. So initially we focused on private projects where it's easier to reach quick agreements with budget owners who are interested in lowering costs, of course, without losing the quality of the results. Okay, strategy number 7. At the moment, there has been not great progress in road infrastructure due to the problems previously described. However, we have focused on state-owned companies such as hydroelectric, plants, aqueducts, and sewage systems. We have also approached majors. By majors, I mean leaders of local governments to advise their engineers or engineering departments to include or to add the Vetiver item to their technical specifications. There are 3 details that we consider the most important for the success of the project and that should be requested from potential candidates or participants to execute the project. Number 1 is to use the correct variety, which is Chrysopogon sissanioides with a deep root system, which no atrophiate. Number 2 is install following the correct planting density, which is like this: 10 plants per linear meter, forming dense or thick barriers, hedgerows that follow contour lines that follows the contour line, the edges of the land. And number 3, which is very important for us here in Costa Rica, is that those responsible